Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land.
Right, so I'm starting?
Yep.
Yeah, well, welcome to Country Cousins. I'm back. I'm in a garden. Stopped living in a bus, came to Warrigal to live, and here I am with my new garden, and I love it. I just love having my own garden.
Right, well, now I see you've already met Helen.
Do you want to start again?
No, of course I don't want to start again. Right, well, here we are in your garden, and now you have been notoriously a nomad nearly all of your life.
Well, most of my adult life, yes.
And now here you are being a landed person.
I know. Little roots going down.
I know, how's that?
Yeah, well, it's looking good in here, isn't it?
It is looking very good in here. Now, how have you been a nomad?
I've been a nomad since the age of about 34 until 2 years ago. And I'm 75 now. Oh, hang on, there was a bit of time in the middle when I met the beloved, and it took me 10 years to get him out of town. And then we hit the road. And then when I said, I think I've had enough, he was like, what? So this was the man who didn't want to go, didn't want to stop. So it's been wonderful, just wonderful. Had the best fun.
You've lived in a bus, haven't you? And
yeah, the old Bedford bus. I think we did a show about it once,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
we did.
And it's parked up now, and I don't care about it. Michael says, the bus this, the bus that. And I'm like, well, I don't care, I'm finished with it. 25 years was enough.
Right, now, before this was a garden and a house, it was actually a bomb shelter, wasn't it?
Yes, but not in the bomb shelter sort of sense of the word. It was a dugout, and this was where Warrigal would come if it was bombed by the Japanese in World War II. And this part of it here is where old Mrs. Gapes' house was, or
and
still
who is old Mrs. Gapes?
Oh, look, I don't know her name now. I can't remember. She's got children. She was a hell of a nice woman. I only got to know her in her very last few years. And she lived there, and this part was her garden. And so we built a house that looked just like hers. And so there's these two lovely old houses. And they look old.
So she was an
hers
historic...
is genuinely old, and ours is to look like hers.
So she is an historic personage around town.
Well, she's dead now, but she was... Oh, everybody knew her. And she was a real live wire. Mm.
Much like yourself.
Oh, you could say. Depends on which day, darling.
All right. Well, now... you keep moving back there.
Oh, stop it. Mm.
Now, just before we appreciate your garden, which is actually pretty amazing, you've been almost to the top of the Himalayas.
No, I got to base camp of Nanga Parbat, which is, I think, the third highest. Well, actually, I didn't get to base camp. I got to within maybe half a kilometre of it, and the ground was very soggy and boggy and full of ice, and I thought, I haven't got the right shoes. I'll come back later, and I never did. Mm.
And
I stayed at Fairy Meadows, which is the camp below that, and I stayed there probably 3 weeks.
But that was right up high where you could hardly breathe, where there's no oxygen, isn't that right?
Oh, you're getting pretty. You do feel it there, yeah, for sure. But
and last century.
And last century, yeah. And I went over Torong La in Nepal, and that you really do get short of breath. You know, you worry. You lying on your side and you can fall asleep, but if you roll onto your back in your sleep, then the energy required to lift your diaphragm is too much, and you wake up short of breath, you know, like you're right on the limit. Mm.
And you cruise through India. You love all those wonderful, colourful, exotic places, don't you?
Absolutely. Who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't? All right.
Well, and that's sometimes reflected in my garden. We'll see.
Well, now, your garden has just turned into an extraordinary little oasis. It's squashed into a tiny little piece of land.
Little being the operative word, yeah.
And when kids walk past you, they just gape in amazement and excitement.
Some of them do. They get quite excited, yeah. And people enjoy my garden as much as I do, which pleases me no end. Yeah,
fantastic. Mm. And you're contributing a lot of oxygen to the environment. Processing carbon or something?
Something like that. The front garden I don't pay as much attention to as the veggie patch. That's where I'm trying to build the soil up. It's pretty hard soil here. It's very rich, but it turns to bricks in the summer, this part through here.
Good. Now, show us some of your favourite luscious plants in this front area.
This fuchsia is stolen. You know when you see a fuchsia and think, oh, that's nice, and you just sort of go like that as you walk past and take it away? And it grew and grew and grew. And look at it, it always, like 9-10 months of the year, it just does that. Isn't that fabulous? I call it Alex's fuchsia because it was a man named Alex from whom I pinched it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very happy with that. And this is from a friend. You know, your best plants grow from where you take, when you get them off a friend. And of course the good thing is if it dies I can go back and get another one, or if hers dies she can come and get a bit off mine.
That's a gorgeous colour, that geranium. Now, is that one of those modern ones that's not quite so lush, isn't it?
Well, it's very lush, but they are so prone to disease. They just kind of think, oh, I think I'll die now. They're not tough like these things here, like this stuff here just will never die, I don't think.
You mean the common old garden geranium?
Yeah, the ones that grow taller. But these are more compact growing. And there's sometimes you get this little white, tiny little white mighty insect that gets on it, and they'll just suck the juice out of it and kill it if you turn your back for too long. I have to use white oil a lot. See, it's a beautiful big blousy flower. It's just gorgeous.
Blousy, that's a good word for it.
Yes. I've got a lot of pots just here because the west wall of the house is going to get painted this summer, and I know what's going to happen. These big men are going to come in with ladders and big feet, so I'll just shift all of these pots out of the way, and these little geraniums here at the bottom, they'll tough it out. Even if they get smashed, they'll come back.
Yeah, big, clumsy, hobnail, boot-footed men, eh?
That's right, ladders and all of the stuff, you know, paint and crap. I'm not looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to having a nice west wall.
Never mind, I'm looking forward to feasting my eyes on your petunias, of which you actually turned me on to petunias because they are an extremely generous flower, are they not?
They are, and they're pretty tough too. They can handle the heat. Well, better than pansies, that's for sure.
You don't mind a salvia, do you?
No, salvias are very good. And I've got a couple of verbenas and they're pretty good too. But
I love that little beautiful scarlet, bright red verbena with the white eye.
That one, yes, it is nice. Even though I love all these pretty little things, I do find myself being pushed towards tougher and more dry tolerant because the climate is changing, and I think that probably this will be the last year I'll try and grow pansies. It's just too much work and the climate doesn't suit them anymore, so I'm going to stow petunias, and then I'm going into things like verbenas and salvias and fuchsias and good old wallflowers.
I love a wallflower, but I have to say I am enjoying some pansies in my garden at the moment, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I am very covetous of this pretty little fuchsia you have here.
Yes, Preston Guild it's called, and it grows from a cutting like nothing, and it's just starting to hit its straps now. It'll be good in another 12 months. I'll prune it now and get it to thicken up after it's finished flowering. I'm not going to prune it now. It's looking lovely.
And you actually are branching out into more fuchsias, aren't you?
Yes, they don't like a frost, but I don't know how many frosts we're going to get from now on anyway.
Oh, you could always throw yourself over them in the
middle of the night. I have done that actually, rushed out with old sheets in the middle of the night. But you just have to roll with the punches, don't you?
Now, I must say that a poppy is very hard to beat.
Well, I like them too, just the good old Iceland poppies. And I love the way they've got these furry little buds and everything like that. But they'd get knocked around in the wind, Christine. I don't know. I love them. Another bloom that I might be leaving behind.
No, well, I'm a bit impressed with them because I've got one that's come up in the crack in my concrete half. So anything that can do that, I'm really impressed with. Tough, and it didn't turn a hair when we had that very evil wind the other day.
Mm. Yeah, well, you got luckier than I did. These just got wrapped around everything, and I was less than impressed. And one even had the nerve to die. So what I've done here is I've kept all the little trimmings off the sides of the sewing that I do for Days for Girls. You get long little skinny bits of fabric.
All cotton?
All got to be cotton. And I've kept them all, and I just put them down here at the front edge here for mulch because it'll go in eventually.
I know, they all disappear. I've seen them disappear.
A few bits of rag over there from last year, and they're pretty durable. And they give a bit of colour too.
Oh, they do. Especially the floral pieces.
And I just love recycling stuff, you know, so I'm recycling back into the dirt.
Yes, you are. You're a wonderful recycler.
Yeah. Well, give it on the right day. Mm.
Now, this gardinia hedge was such a good idea of yours. Now, you planted this a very long time ago.
When the house was built, 15 years ago. So that hedge has been trimmed back a few times. It's never been properly taken care of in the sense, you know, that someone rushes out and water it and everything like that. So when the tenants were living in the house before we moved in, I don't know how well it was taken care of, but they're tough. And it's hot there against that wall, and they manage quite nicely.
Now, gardenias have such a heavenly scent. And you do feed them Epsom salts, don't you?
Oh yes, I feed them Epsom salts and water because I've got a sore ankle and I soak my foot in Epsom salts and then give it to the gardenias and they don't seem to mind at all. And my very first corsage was given to me. It had a gardenia in it. So for me, the gardenias are there's a lot of good memories and stuff like that. Yeah, going to the ball at the Palais. Remember the old Palais ballroom near where Luna Park is? It burnt down.
Yes.
Yes, so that was where I wore my first corsage and it was a gardenia.
Well, for all we know, it could even be the toe tea that they enjoy so much.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yes. Well, I think it's the Epsom salts.
Oh, I'm thinking it's the toe tea.
No. But they do well, and they, like I said, it's so tough there. They'll be all right. It is, isn't it?
Don't mind if I do.
Oh, that is so nice. And you put it beside the bed on your bedside table. You get aromatherapy all night.
Beautiful.
Mm. So I try to make as little impact on the planet with my garden. So I just use natural fertiliser stuff. I don't use chemicals. And everything stays in the garden except rose prunings and sometimes some really, really woody bits that are just too blimmin' hard to cut up.
I'd certainly get the rose prunings because they're very unpleasant to stand on or pick up.
Yeah, and they carry disease. So mostly I propagate a lot of stuff here and use it for fundraising, and I get a lot of pleasure out of that. And it's, these tinsy little bits, and then next thing, sometimes you've got a flower, sometimes not.
I get a lot of pleasure out of you doing that when I receive some nice fuchsia plants.
Yeah. See, now that corner over there, that's all just bits from various friends, and even the little bird bath in there was given me by someone who didn't want it anymore. So,
well, that's a nice thing about gardening too, because some of the plants come from people and their memories, and they remind you of people. I like that. Yeah. And now this was just a hard bit of dirt when moved here.
This is where the dugout was, and it used to open down onto Trumpy Lane. And so this was all underneath here, and it's all been filled in since. And, you get the odd bit of wire and crap like that comes up from when it was filled in. But if the Japanese had come to Warrigal and bombed, this was where the people of the township could come and shelter.
But didn't they sometimes, they did gather here sometimes, didn't they? Didn't Michael's mother wasn't she ushered here?
No, Michael's mother remembers going in it as a kid to have a look. To look at it, like probably daring themselves to go in. It would have been dark and full of spiders, I suppose, but it was here. And of course, obviously, it wasn't going to be used, and so they just filled it in. And all this part here became Mrs. Gapes's garden. And then when this block was developed, her garden became just enough space to put my skinny little house in.
Well, this would have been a country house when Mrs. Gapes first moved in, no doubt.
Oh, it was never a farmhouse. It would have been a working class cottage. There was plenty of space, there was still trees on the other side of the railway line. There was plenty of space, so nobody thought it didn't matter if there's a great big long garden. Mm.
Now your silver bed, well charred, the leaves are massive.
It's good soil here. It's good rich soil, but in the summer it dries as hard as the hobs of Hades. So I'm working it up with lots of mulch. That'll all get dug in later, and I put down lucerne hay as mulch, and that really helps to break up the soil. It does a great job, and parts of it are coming along nicely, and other parts of it's just like, okay, next year.
And you eat a lot from this garden too, don't you? And in fact, last year you grew and preserved enough tomatoes in bottles to keep you in pasta sauce all winter, didn't you?
Yeah, all winter, and I just used the last jar about a month ago. So I've planted more tomatoes this year. See if I can go the whole year from season to season and not have to buy tinned tomatoes.
Well, that's not bad because, this is a pocket handkerchief-sized garden for sure.
It is very small, and that's why I have to be very careful to keep the soil well nourished and keep turning in stuff, and all my kitchen scraps and everything all just go straight into it. I haven't got room for a compost bay.
No, but you have room for a worm farm.
I've got 2 worm farms.
So here's your dear little worm farms in the shade here.
Yeah, it gets too hot for them in the summer and they don't like it. And it's also a bit protected from frost in the winter, so I think they'll probably keep them there. But come on over, I'll give you a look inside. And they provide for me the wormwee and that beautiful black gold stuff that you get there. So I get that out, and if I'm planting a seedling, for instance, I'll put about a heaped up tablespoon around the new going in seedling, and that gets it going. And the other thing I do is I put, pudding bowl size, smallish, in a bucket of 20 litres of water and fill that up and rescue the worms, any worms that were in it, rescue them. And then I put a fish tank aerator in it for 48 hours. And that is the biodynamic way of bringing on the really good bacteria. And then I water that down 10 to 1 and put that on my plants, and by crikey, you should see them go.
Whoa, I didn't know you did all that. You reckon you can actually hear the worms?
Yes, tiny, tiny little sounds.
Sounds like bubbles.
Yes, or tiny little worm mouths. But they get through quite a bit in the warmer weather. They slow down in winter time, but by gee, they can get through some stuff in the summer.
Tromboncino was a great pride of your garden last summer.
Yes, it was. I had fruit yay long. It was wonderful. And I've got another one. So because I'm short of space, I've planted it just the other side of the lemon tree, and it uses the lemon tree as scaffold. And so down through the lemon tree, I've got these Tromboncino growing and hanging. And I picked them when they're only about 12, 14 inches long, and they're good then to eat. If you let them get really big, well, for a start off, no one's that hungry, and they don't have a lot of taste.
Well, I was that hungry because you gave me half of one of those long ones, and I reckon it ate up beautifully.
Yeah, it depends what you put with it. It's a bit like marrow, you know.
It leaves marrow for dead, I reckon. I'm really impressed with it.
Anyway, I've got another one growing this year, and I'm going to pump it along a bit, but I'll see how I go this year, and hopefully I'll get another good one. But it hybridises straight through into your pumpkins, which you're growing, and I've left one of the self-sown pumpkins grow this year just to see what I get. Will I get a pumpkin like I got last year, or will I get a cross between the two? We'll see.
Nice. Well, I think that's a pretty exciting experiment. And salad is on your menu all the time, and you keep yourselves in salad all the time, don't you? Didn't even through winter.
Yeah, well, I don't eat a lot of salad in winter. I mean, I do a bit, but we grow all our own greens and peas, but I can't get capsicum to come up nice and ripe and red, so I buy caps to go in. And of course, I don't grow my own olives. You can't have a salad without olives in it. But all the spring oniony bits and pieces and stuff like that, they're always there. And pak choi, it's gone to seed, and once you get a pak choi plant and it goes to seed, you've got it forever. It's a good little veg. You just pull up the whole thing, throw it into your stir fry, boom, boom.
Beautiful. And look at all the gorgeous colour, and you've got some most curious and interesting pots, and growing in pots is useful for you, isn't it?
Well, I get a lot of pleasure out of it, and as we moved here 2 and a bit years ago, my friend's mother was going into care, and she was pot nuts, and she had hundreds of pots. And so I scored about 30 pots, and I've loved having them. I really have. The ones that are in the front garden now, when they're finished, I'll bring them out here and trot out something else. I've got a couple of those ones there coming along nicely, and I'll just swap them in and out, so there's always something looking pretty good. And then when the men come to paint the west wall, I'll just bring it all out here.
Now you've even espaliering a fruit tree.
Yes, I've got 2 plum trees there. This is their second year, and no fruit so far. Come on, guys, you can do it.
These strawberries that you're watering at the moment,
yes,
they're blackbird proof.
I'm so lucky with Michael being a builder. Look at all this beautiful Rio all along. It doesn't matter where I want to plant something. If it's a climber, boom, there's the Rio. Spoiled rotten I am.
Fantastic. What's changed that you decided to try living a landed life as opposed to the nomadic life? Because you've lived and travelled all over Australia, haven't you? And Michael was the chippy, and he carried his tools in the back boot of the bus, and you were very happy with that existence. What do you reckon?
Oh, look, I don't know. Well, I got older, that's a start. But the other thing was I had a fabulous vegetable garden at a friend's house in Mount Many Peaks near Albany in Western Australia, and she and I were thick as thieves. We had a great time, and best beans I've ever grown in my life I grew there. And then, of course, the job finished, and it was like, because we were there for 5 months. It was a big farm, and there were lots of work to be done. And I had just sort of drove away from it, and I thought, And then I thought, I really want my own garden that I get to say, and I want my own washing machine. So, I just said to Michael, I think 25 years living in the bus is enough. And he was like, what? But he's all right about it.
Well, you've left a lot of gardens behind, I know that for a fact.
Yeah, and I've even weeded bus stops in Perth and things like that. I just have to. And Michael pretends he doesn't know me. It's all right. And I've dug up agapanthus growing in state forest up on the coast of New South Wales, and I've pulled out a few pieces that oughtn't be there up in the Gascoyne. Further north than that, I don't really know too much about. I've got to be careful because I don't know what I'm pulling out, so I just don't do anything. But
Yes, well, guerrilla gardening, that's called,
Isn't
and
it?
you're
Yes.
doing it for the planet, aren't you?
yes. But it's things are changing, and things are in a bad way in many regards. I can remember we stopped on the side of the road, going to Exmouth, and all along the side of the road was beautiful colour and beautiful grevilleas, and it was wonderful. I said, stop! And I got out and I walked amongst them, and I reached underneath and I just put my hand underneath beautiful head of yellow poker grevillea, and puddles of nectar fell into the palm of my hand. And that's when I thought, where are the birds? There were no nectar-eating birds. We stood and listened and watched, like a small paddock we could see, not one bird, the feral cats. And it is like a ghost town up there. There is nothing. There's big birds in the sky, raptors and the like, but the little birds down on the ground, no, hardly any bees. And I nearly cried. It was just like, this shouldn't. And so here was this. I was licking it off the palm of my hand. It's no wonder the birds go for it. It tastes great. And I thought, hang on, this is bad. We've got to be more careful with our cats.
Well, and you do good things for the planet. You're very ethical about all that, aren't you?
Well, I try to be, and it's hard to. Sometimes it's most inconvenient to do the right thing.
Never mind.
So see these little primulas. Every time I look at them, just for a second or two, I'm taken back to Fairy Meadows, which is the camp below base camp on Nunga Parbat, where I camped. And I saw them, primulas, growing wild. And they grow, just 1.5, 2 inches high, little carpets of white and pale mauve. They're not the deep red ones, so they must be hybridised. But they were growing wild.
Gosh.
It was so pretty.
Native wildflowers
Yes,
to the area.
That's right, yeah. And this is in Pakistan, yeah.
You've planted your capsicums, or are they chilies?
No, they're capsicums, and I've put down the lucerne, and there's a bit of basil in there too, and right down the end.
Eggplants, beautiful eggplants.
Yeah, and they're the best I've ever grown. I only started growing them last year. Actually, most of my garden, when I look at it, is a Solanaceae family, because I've got potatoes, tomatoes.
Well, they
eggplant.
grow well. Then there's a nice spud there. What sort of spud's that?
It's self-sown, it's called.
They're
no
good.
idea. Yes. It's probably a Dutch cream, but it hasn't flowered yet, so I can't say for sure.
And nasturtiums are very hard to go past.
I love them. And you put them in salads, and you can pick them, and then you snip off the leaf, that bit, and put a daub of cream cheese which has been watered down a little bit with a capful of white wine, and just pop it in your mouth.
Yum. Well, thank you for that lovely tour around your garden.
Listen, she sprung this on me. I didn't have time to tidy up or anything. There are bags of potting mix, there's all sorts of nonsense on the benches. You cut it out, girl.
I did give her 5 minutes. I wasn't going to warn you at all, and just do the intro, but I thought that's pushing the friendship.
Oh, you're forgiven.
I know. I hope that duck doesn't eat that young golden zucchini bud. Well, did you enjoy today's show, Helen?
Hey, I had a lot of fun, sure.
Well, that's marvellous, and we'll see you all again next week. I'm Christine.
And I'm Helen.
Birds are singing in the trees, all the leaves are falling in the breeze. The views all around are the best you've seen, living on the land. Take another stroll in the morning sun. The sun's always brighter when the spring's begun. Family all together when the day is done, living on the land. Living on the land, living on the land.